Chapter 1. The Night the Sky Answered. The evening had been quiet in the way only rural Kansas could be. Jonathan Kent sat on the old couch with his boots still on, one arm resting along the backrest, the other holding a folded newspaper he hadn't really been reading for the past 10 minutes. Martha leaned into him, her head against his shoulder, her fingers absently tracing the seam of his jacket. The lamp in the corner cast a warm amber glow across the living room. Outside, the fields were dark and calm, stretching endlessly under a clear sky. It should have been a perfect moment. Martha smiled faintly, though her eyes lingered on the empty space across the room, a space she imagined filled with toys, noise, and laughter. Children. She never said it out loud, but Jonathan knew. He always did. Then the house shook. A low, thunderous boom rolled through the air, rattling the windows and knocking the newspaper from Jonathan's hands. The lights flickered. Somewhere in the distance, something screamed through the sky. Jonathan was on his feet instantly. What was that? Martha asked, already moving toward the door. Another explosion followed, closer this time, and an eerie orange glow pulsed through the window. They didn't speak as they grabbed coats and a flashlight. Some instincts didn't need words. The field was burning. Not a flame in the usual sense, not a wildfire, but scorched in wide circular patterns, the crops pressed flat as if something enormous had spun through them. Smoke rose into the night, and in the center of the devastation lay two strange objects, half buried in the soil. Metal, smooth, unfamiliar. And then Jonathan saw them. Two children. One was a baby, no more than a year old, wrapped in unfamiliar fabric, crying softly but unharmed. The other was a little girl, perhaps 4, standing protectively in front of him. Her posture was stiff, unnatural for a child her age. Her eyes were wide, alert, not with fear but with calculation. Martha knelt immediately. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, reaching out slowly, carefully. The girl didn't pull away. She watched Martha closely, studying her face, her voice, her hands. Something ancient and distant flickered behind her gaze, something that did not belong to Earth. Jonathan said nothing. He only stared at the ships, at the sky, at the impossible reality settling in his chest. "There, not from here," he finally said. Martha knew. That night changed everything. They didn't call the police. By morning, the ships were hidden, the field explained away as a meteor strike, and 2 children sat at the Kent kitchen table wrapped in blankets. The baby had quieted the moment Martha held him, gripping her finger with surprising strength. The girl spoke little. When she did, her voice was calm, formal, almost cold. She explained who they were in simple terms. Their home was gone. Their parents were gone. They had been sent away. Jonathan's fear didn't come from the children. It came from what the world would do to them. Government agents, scientists, facilities with white walls and locked doors. A lifetime of questions and pain. That night, long after the children slept, Jonathan and Martha talked in hushed voices. "We can't keep them," Jonathan said at first, pacing the kitchen. "We don't know what they are, what they can do." "They're children," Martha answered quietly, "and they're alone." Jonathan stopped pacing. "They could take them from us. Then we protect them," she said, like any parents would. It took him until sunrise to say yes. Naming the boy came easily. Martha held him by the window one afternoon, watching the sunlight catch in his dark hair. There was gentleness in him, a quiet presence, a steadiness. "Clark," she said softly. "Clark Kent." The girl corrected her immediately. "His name is Kal-El." Martha smiled, unfazed. "That may be where he comes from," she replied gently, "but here, he deserves a name that lets him belong." The girl hesitated. She didn't argue. Later, alone, she whispered his true name to herself, a promise she did not yet understand. The girl's name was Kara, and at night when the house slept, she would slip quietly from her bed and walk to the place she had hidden it beneath the floorboards of the barn. A small metallic cube. With a touch, it would glow. A projection would rise, a calm, commanding figure speaking in measured tones. Her father, or what remained of him. He gave her instructions, reminded her of her duty, told her to observe, to prepare, to wait. Kara listened, always, because he was the last piece of home she had left. The adoption papers came weeks later. They came with help. Lionel Luther didn't ask many questions. He rarely did when a deal benefited him. Jonathan paid his part of the bargain with clenched teeth and lowered eyes, but he paid it nonetheless. By the time the ink dried, the world believed 2 orphaned children had found a family. Only the Kents knew the truth, and only one of the children knew that Earth was never meant to stay peaceful forever. The pie and the choice. It happened only a few months after they arrived on Earth. Kara already understood one important rule. The truth had to stay hidden. The Kents had explained it carefully, not as a threat, but as a warning. Governments asked questions. Governments took people away, and people like them never came back the same. Kara accepted this, but she understood it in her own way. To her, authority meant danger. So when the sheriff came to the farm that afternoon, fear took root in her chest. He was investigating the explosion in the field, the strange fire, the crater, the rumors. He also asked, politely, about the sudden adoption of 2 children. Jonathan spoke with him in the barn, calm and confident, telling the story they had prepared. Everything was going according to plan. The sheriff had no real suspicions. He was ready to leave. But Kara didn't know that. To her, the badge meant power. Power meant loss, and loss meant Clark. She watched from a distance, her small hands clenched. If the sheriff took them, if he hurt Clark, she would never forgive herself. So she made a decision. Quietly, Kara put on the simple costume she sometimes wore when she imagined herself as a guardian, a Kryptonian ranger, a protector. She took a farm tool from the shed. Small, heavy, sharp enough to be deadly in the right hands, yet ordinary enough that a child holding it wouldn't immediately raise alarm. She walked toward the barn. At the doorway, she hesitated. For a moment, she looked less like a warrior and more like a child playing a role, standing too straight, trying to be brave, unsure if she truly understood what she was about to do. Jonathan noticed her first. His blood ran cold. He opened his mouth to speak, to stop her, to send her away, when Martha saw Kara through the kitchen window. Martha understood instantly. She ran outside, crossed the yard, and knelt in front of Kara before anyone else could react. Her voice was calm, warm, almost playful. "Sweetheart," she said gently, brushing Kara's hair back with her fingers. "I told you, space heroes play inside. Daddy is talking with the sheriff right now." Kara froze. Martha smiled and lowered her voice. "Come on, you've played enough for today. I just took a blueberry pie out of the oven." Then Martha turned to the sheriff, still smiling, completely unafraid. "Sorry about that, Mr. Hawkins," she said kindly. "We won't interrupt you any further." The sheriff smiled back, waved it off, and left a few minutes later, unaware of how close the world had come to a terrible mistake. Inside the house, Kara sat at the kitchen table, her feet dangling above the floor. The pie steamed between them, untouched. Martha sat across from her. "What you were about to do," Martha said softly, "would have hurt someone who didn't deserve it." Kara looked down. "He could take us," she whispered. "Take Clark." Martha shook her head gently. "The world isn't evil," she said. "Sometimes it's just afraid. The sheriff isn't a monster. He's a neighbor. He's a father. I know his family." Kara listened. "Good and evil aren't about power," Martha continued. "They're about choices. You can fight injustice, but only in ways that protect life, not destroy it." The door opened then. Jonathan came in, his face serious. Kara stiffened, waiting for anger. Instead, he knelt in front of her, smiled softly, and said, "You scared me, but I know you were trying to protect your brother." He ruffled her hair. "Next time," he added gently, "you trust us." That night, they drank tea and ate pie together, and something inside Kara changed. For the first time, she began to understand what it meant to choose humanity. The day the world became too small. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. Jonathan had been working the field since morning, the tractor coughing and groaning under the weight of years and dust. Clark sat nearby, kicking at the dirt, watching his father with wide, curious eyes. Kara was closer to the barn, sorting tools, half listening, half lost in her own thoughts. Then the tractor slipped, a broken latch, a sudden tilt. Metal screamed as the machine lurched sideways, its massive weight tipping toward Jonathan. Time fractured. Jonathan barely had time to turn before the tractor came down. Clark moved. No one saw him run. One moment he was standing still, the next he was there, hands pressed against cold metal, small fingers digging into steel that should have crushed him. The tractor stopped inches above Jonathan's head. Silence followed. Jonathan stared up, frozen, his breath caught somewhere between shock and disbelief. Clark looked down at his hands, his face pale, his mouth slightly open. I didn't mean to," Clark whispered. Kara rushed forward. For a moment, she didn't speak. She just looked at the tractor, at Clark, at Jonathan, still on the ground. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with realization. Martha arrived seconds later. They moved the tractor together, slowly, carefully, as if touching it too suddenly might shatter whatever fragile normality remained. Inside the house, the silence was heavier than any scream. Jonathan sat at the table, staring at his hands. Martha held Clark close, her arms trembling. Clark kept looking at Kara, searching her face for answers she didn't have. "I didn't know," Kara said finally, her voice quiet but firm. "I swear, on Krypton, children didn't manifest like this. Not so early, not like that." Jonathan looked up. "You knew this could happen," he said, not accusing, just desperate. "I knew he was different," Kara answered, "but I didn't know when or how." That night, no one slept. Before dawn, Kara slipped from her bed. The farm was quiet, wrapped in mist and early light. She crossed the yard barefoot, heart pounding, and lifted the loose board beneath the barn floor. The cube waited where she had hidden it, smooth, dark, patient. The hologram flickered to life. Her father stood before her, calm and distant. "Why didn't you tell me?" Kara demanded, her voice shaking for the first time. "He's 6. He could have been killed, or worse, seen." Jor-El regarded her carefully. "You were prepared," he said. "That was enough." "It wasn't," she snapped. "They're not Kryptonian soldiers. They're children. They don't know what they are." "You are forgetting your purpose," he replied. "His abilities were inevitable. The yellow sun would awaken them. I trained you to guide him." Kara clenched her fists. "You trained me to obey?" she said quietly. Jor-El's expression didn't change. "Guide him," he repeated. "Protect the secret. Teach him control. This is only the beginning." Footsteps sounded in the distance. Kara deactivated the cube and hid it away, her hands trembling. As she walked back toward the house, the sky was already brightening, and with it, the realization that Clark's childhood had ended far earlier than it should have, and that whatever came next, she would have to face it alone. A normal morning. Kara woke before the alarm. She always did. For a moment, she lay still, listening to the familiar sounds of the farm, the soft creak of the house settling, the distant hum of the fields, the quiet breathing of a world that felt almost peaceful. Then she sat up, ran a hand through her hair, and glanced at the clock. Late enough to be annoying, early enough to matter. She crossed the hall and knocked once on Clark's door before opening it. "Up, Smallville," she said. "If you missed the bus again, I'm not explaining it to Mom." Clark groaned from under the blanket. "You said that yesterday." "And yesterday I lied," Kara replied with a grin. Downstairs, the smell of breakfast filled the kitchen. Martha moved easily between stove and counter, coffee already poured. Jonathan sat at the table, scanning the paper, pretending not to notice when Clark stumbled in half awake. The morning routine was familiar, comfortable, almost ordinary, almost. They ate together, toast, eggs, laughter, and for a few minutes, the world was just a family starting another day. The walk to the bus stop cut through open fields, dew still clinging to the grass. Kara walked a step ahead, hands in her jacket pockets, while Clark kicked a pebble along the dirt road. "So," Kara said casually, "you gonna talk to Lana today, or just stare at her like she's a solar eclipse?" Clark nearly tripped. "I don't stare." "You absolutely stare." He shot her a look. "You notice everything, don't you?" Kara smiled. "It's a gift." After a beat, Clark smirked. "Funny, because I noticed something too." "Oh no. You keep pretending Whitney Fordman doesn't exist," he said, "which means he definitely does." Kara scoffed, but her ears turned red. "He's loud and full of himself." "And captain of the football team," Clark added. She nudged him with her shoulder. "Don't change the subject." They walked in silence for a moment. "Hey," Clark said quietly, "do you ever miss it? Krypton?" Kara slowed. Her voice, when she answered, was measured, distant. "Sometimes." "And your dad?" Clark asked. "Jor-El?" She stopped walking. For just a second, the warmth drained from her expression. "He did what he thought was right," she said flatly. Then, just as quickly, she smiled again. "Race you to the bus," she said, and took off as the yellow vehicle appeared at the end of the road. Clark followed, confused but laughing. School was school. Lockers slammed, bells rang, teachers lectured. On the first break, Pete Ross slid into step beside Clark like he always did. "Tell me you did the math homework," Pete said. Clark shrugged. "Depends how convincing you need me to sound." Kara watched them from a distance, amused. Pete waved. She waved back. It looked normal. That was the dangerous part. By evening, the farm was alive again with work. Clark repaired a section of fence under Jonathan's watchful eye, concentrating hard, not because it was difficult, but because he had to remember to hold back. Kara helped Martha in the kitchen, chopping vegetables, listening more than she spoke. The sun dipped low, painting the fields gold. At dinner, they sat together like they always did, tired, content, safe. For now. Kara looked around the table and thought, briefly, irrationally, this is what Earth feels like. And she wondered how long she would be allowed to keep it. The choice. Kara stood in front of the mirror, barely recognizing the girl looking back at her. The dress was simple but beautiful, soft fabric falling perfectly along her shoulders. It wasn't Kryptonian. It wasn't a uniform. It was just hers. She adjusted the neckline with careful fingers. Behind her, Martha watched quietly. "You look stunning," Martha said at last. Kara smiled faintly, then hesitated. "I don't really know what I'm doing." Martha chuckled and stepped closer. "No one ever does the first time." She reached up and gently fixed a loose strand of Kara's hair, her movements slow and practiced. Maternal, familiar. "You've saved the world," Martha added. "I think you can survive a prom." Kara laughed softly, a real laugh, and some of the tension left her shoulders. "I used to think moments like this didn't matter," Kara admitted, meeting Martha's eyes in the mirror. Back on Krypton, everything was about purpose. Martha rested her hands lightly on Kara's shoulders. "This is part of it too," she said. "Choosing joy, letting yourself be young." Kara swallowed, emotion tightening her throat. "Thank you," she whispered. Martha squeezed her shoulders gently. "Always." They stood there for a moment longer, not saying anything, just sharing the quiet. Outside, the evening waited, and for once, Kara was ready to step into it. The gym was full of light. Music echoed off the walls, laughter spilled across the floor, and for a brief, fragile moment, Kara allowed herself to believe that this night could be simple. She moved with the rhythm, her hands resting lightly on Whitney's shoulders as they danced. He was smiling, nervous in that awkward, honest way, and she smiled back. This was supposed to be one of the happiest nights of her life. Then the music stuttered. Someone near the edge of the dance floor looked down at their phone. Then another. Then dozens. A murmur spread through the room, rising into confusion, into fear. Kara felt it before she saw it. Students rushed to the windows. Outside, the sky was wrong, split open by shadows that did not belong to Earth. 3 massive alien ships hovered above Smallville, silent and immovable, blotting out the stars. Across the gym, someone screamed. News alerts lit up every screen. Cities around the world. The same ships, everywhere. A deep, distant explosion rolled through the air. Kara's breath caught as she saw it. A building in the distance, struck by a beam of light from one of the ships, collapsing into fire and smoke. This wasn't preparation. This was invasion. She turned, searching instinctively, and saw Clark. He was already moving, pushing through the doors, shouting instructions, guiding people away from the windows toward shelter. Chloe was with him, Pete too. Fear was everywhere. But Clark moved through it like an anchor, steady and determined. He wasn't thinking, he was acting. And Kara felt it, sharp and unmistakable, the difference between them. She was supposed to go somewhere else. The cube was calling. Orders were waiting. And her chest tightened as she stepped away from the crowd, away from the noise, away from Clark. Every step felt wrong, heavy, like she was walking against herself. As she changed, pulling on the suit she had worn so many times in secret, the weight of it felt different, not powerful, cold. From the shadows above the town, she watched Clark again, watched him run toward danger without hesitation, watched him help strangers, watched him choose this world as if it had always been his. And for the first time, Kara felt it clearly, that sick, hollow feeling, the feeling of being on the wrong side of history. Still, she obeyed. The soldiers of Zod moved with brutal efficiency. They weren't fully empowered yet, but they were organized, prepared, and they were waiting for her. Her orders were simple. Neutralize Kal-El. She saw him before he saw her. Clark was fighting, holding back, trying not to hurt anyone. When the soldiers overwhelmed him, when restraints snapped into place around his arms, Kara froze. This wasn't strategy. This was betrayal. Clark looked up. Their eyes met. Understanding crossed his face. Slow, painful, devastating. "You," he whispered. That was when everything broke. As they dragged him toward the ship, something inside Kara screamed. Years of obedience, years of training, years of believing that purpose was more important than people. All of it collapsed under the weight of one truth. She was losing her brother. Jor-El's voice echoed in her mind. A Kryptonian does not abandon her mission. But Martha's voice was louder, softer, human. Choose. Kara tore the cube from where it was hidden and raised it in front of the soldiers. This ends now, she said, and she destroyed it. The blast of energy rippled through the air. The connection severed, the orders silenced. The Kryptonians hesitated. That was enough. Kara moved, faster than thought, tearing through restraints, freeing Clark, standing at his side as he rose. "You okay?" she asked, her voice breaking. Clark nodded once. "Let's send them home." Together, they fought. Without Kara's support, Zod's forces were unprepared. The yellow sun had not finished empowering them. Earth's military closed in. The advantage vanished. Zod understood. This was no longer a conquest. It was a retreat. As the ships withdrew, the sky slowly returned to normal, leaving behind smoke, fire, and silence. After the fall, the truck rolled slowly up the familiar dirt road. The farm looked the same. The porch light glowing softly, the fields quiet under the night sky, and yet everything felt different. The world had almost ended, Smallville had almost been erased, and somehow, impossibly, this place still stood. Jonathan parked the truck. No one spoke as they stepped out. The air was cool, too calm. Clark stopped on the porch. Kara stopped too. For a moment, neither of them moved. "I need to tell you something," Kara said quietly. Clark turned to her. Her face was pale, her eyes dark with exhaustion and something deeper, guilt that had nowhere left to hide. "The invasion," she continued. "Zod, the soldiers? Random," she swallowed. "I knew it was coming. Not everything, but enough." Clark felt the words hit him one by one. "You followed orders," he said, not accusing, just stating the truth. "I didn't stop it soon enough," Kara replied. "That's on me." Clark stepped closer. "You chose us in the end. You chose this world." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall yet. Then she straightened. Her voice changed, colder, steadier, Kryptonian. "There's one more thing I have to do." Clark frowned. "Kara, I have to tell them," she said, "everything. If I don't, I won't be able to look Martha in the eyes ever again." She didn't wait for an answer. She opened the door and walked inside. Clark followed. "Mama, Dad," Jonathan and Martha looked up from the kitchen table. "There's something else I need to tell you." That was as far as Kara got. Her composure shattered. Tears came hard and fast as she sat down, hands shaking, shoulders caving inward. She didn't try to excuse herself. She didn't soften anything. She told them about Jor-El, about the cube, about the orders she had followed, about knowing Earth was a target, about standing on the wrong side, even briefly. Jonathan didn't interrupt. Inside, his thoughts tore at him. "This is my fault. I should have asked more questions. I brought this into our home." Anger burned in his chest, not at Kara, but at himself, for believing he could protect his family by hiding the truth, for thinking love alone was enough. When she finished, Kara couldn't bring herself to look up. Silence filled the room. Finally, Jonathan spoke. "You were a child," he said slowly, "raised to follow orders. And when it mattered most, you chose this family." His voice cracked. "I should have protected you better." Kara looked up then, stunned. Martha hadn't said anything yet. She stood, walked around the table, and gently pulled Kara into her arms. "I understand," Martha said softly. "More than you think." Kara broke down completely. The days that followed were careful. Martha was kind, gentle. She smiled, asked how Kara was feeling, made her favorite meals. But Kara felt it. The distance. A small hesitation. A pause before a touch. A quiet wall that hadn't been there before. And it hurt more than anger would have. Then one evening, Martha came to her room. She sat beside her on the bed. "I've been thinking," Martha said. "If you hadn't listened to Jor-El, you wouldn't have known the details. You wouldn't have known how Zod would strike." She met Kara's eyes. They would have taken you and Clark first. Kara's breath caught. "You did the right thing," Martha continued, "and I need you to know something." She took Kara's hands. "I don't hold this against you, and I never will. I will never turn away from you." Something inside Kara finally let go. The fear she'd carried, the quiet terror of being rejected, dissolved. She wasn't alone. Not here. 5 years later, the sky above Metropolis shimmered with motion. Two figures flew side by side, effortless, watchful, free. Below them, the city lived. Then time itself bent. The Legion appeared, their technology humming softly as they spoke Kara's name. They needed her. The future depended on it. Kara looked at Clark. "You're ready," she said. He smiled. "So are you." She hugged him tightly once, then stepped back. "I trust you with this world," she said. "And I'll be here," Clark replied. "Whenever you come back." She flew into the light. Clark turned back toward the city, cape catching the wind. Metropolis had its protector. And it all began with a choice.